Noob School. All right, welcome back to Noob School. I believe this is episode 147. Don't hold me to that, but we're thinking it's 147. Anyway, today I've got, believe it or not, another wonderful old friend, Troy Pusateri. Troy, thanks for being here.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Troy and I have been friends for over 20 years, and amazingly, we can't remember how we met. Isn't that wild?
Yeah, it's been a hot minute, but I do know why we met. It was because initially you had reached out to whoever the mystery person that introduced us.
Yes.
But your son at the time was starting the process of going into BUDS, which is Navy SEAL training. And
Yeah.
I think you wanted to have a little bit of someone to talk to who's kind of been there, done that. You and your wife kind of wanted a little bit of guidance while he went through that process.
Yeah. And you didn't know me from Adam, clearly, but you couldn't have been nicer and explained the process. And I remember one thing you said to me after I'd asked all these questions. You said, "John, don't worry about it. It's going to be okay."
Yeah.
And that made us feel good. And it turned out he did make it. It wasn't certainly for nobody. It's not easy. But yeah, that started a really good friendship. And we'll tell you all about it here as we unfold. Troy, as you might have gathered, was a Navy SEAL. And then after completing his duty, became a contractor back to the same group. So he's been protecting us for quite some time. But we'll peel it back to before that. Grew up in Baltimore.
Grew up just outside of Baltimore in a small town called Falston, Maryland.
Falston.
About 20
I
minutes
forgot.
outside
It's
of
not Baltimore. It's Baltimore, right? You got to be a D in there.
Yeah, there is.
Baltimore.
Sometimes there is, yeah.
And then were you involved in that The Wire, that show, The Wire?
You know what? I've never even seen an episode of that. I'm not going to lie. I heard it's pretty wild.
Well,
maybe
it
at
is.
some point I'll get to it.
Doesn't make me want to live in inner city Baltimore. I should
Yeah.
say. It was a good series. And you grew up as a great swimmer, and you belonged to the same club and were friends with the Phelps family, Michael Phelps. And
That is correct. We all came from the same swim club. It was called North Baltimore Aquatic Club.
Yeah.
It was founded by our coach back then, Murray Stevens, who still I keep in touch with to
Really?
this day. He's mentored so many kids, like myself, and he's had over a dozen, maybe close to 2, that have gone to the Olympics. So great, fantastic coach. And he was also my high school teacher as I went through high school, because he was an English teacher at the high school I went
Really?
to as well. So yeah, I get the double dose of him.
Yeah.
With pretty much from 7th grade on to I graduated high school.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So what makes him so good? What does he do or say that makes you swim faster?
I think his coaching style, and back then it was a little different, right? But what made him great was he held us accountable. He never let us slack off. And I really cannot thank the man ever enough, because he ingrained those attributes and qualities in me to not quit, to not back down, that I learned at a very young age as an athlete, that I took, going into college athletics, that I took going into the military, that I still carry with me now in sales. You get knocked on your ass 9 times out of 10, you got to get up those 9 times, right?
Right.
So without having that background, and that I know for a fact I would not be where I'm at today.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. I love that. That's a great lesson. I mean, they say, once you decide that you're going to win, then you're going to win.
Mm-hmm.
It might take you a little longer than you thought, but I mean, as long as you don't quit, you're on the path.
Exactly.
And I also read recently Phelps was talking about, his discipline of practice leading up to the Olympics, and he said he didn't miss a day ever like 365, Christmas Day, I mean, and he said he knew if he missed one day, it would kind of almost all be over.
And that was pretty standard for us back
Yeah.
then. I mean, I can remember when we would have Christmas break, right? And schools would shut down for 2 weeks. Instead of us doing, 1 a day or 2 a days practice, we're in there doing now 3 a days.
Because you have more time.
We'd swim at 6 in the morning to 8 and come back at lunch from 11 to 1 and then come back in the afternoon from 4 to 6.
Damn.
Like we were doing 3 practices a day. But,
Yeah.
outside of those breaks, my life through high school was every morning, get up at 4:30, drive to the pool, in the water at 5:30, swim till 7:30, shower, shove breakfast down your face, school. As soon as school's out, back in the pool for 2.5 hours, drive home, shove food in your face, homework, rinse, wash, repeat.
Yeah.
I didn't have time to really do anything else besides that. I mean, I did occasionally, but like that was my schedule.
Yeah.
From 7th to 12th grade.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And so when you're in the pool, what was your best event?
So I was a distance swimmer. It's not the most exciting to watch. They always used to put those races at like the very end of the swim meets because nobody would really sit around for them. But the mile, the 1,000, I kind of gravitated to those longer events. And again, not very exciting to watch, not very exciting to do either.
But good for the discipline. Just keep doing it. And so you went from there, from a great program, the great coach, you went from there to Clemson, and you were an All-American swimmer there. But I was curious, why Clemson? How did you pick Clemson?
When it was time for me to go to college, I applied to a couple schools, and then I got into 3 of my top choices was Clemson, Florida State, and then the Naval Academy. And I got in all 3 of them. It's ironic that I didn't go to the academy, and then I graduated Clemson and went into the Navy. I'll still never figure that one out. But I just like Clemson because when I came down from my recruiting trip, the coach was very kind of similar in mindset, I felt like, to my former coach in high school. It wasn't too far away from home that I couldn't get back there relatively quick, but it was also far enough away where, you felt like you can get that kind of genuine college experience. And it sat right there kind of like in the Appalachian Mountains. I mean, the university itself, and I actually just rode through it on the way up here today.
Did you really?
Yeah, and it's just a beautiful school. It's just right there on Lake Hartwell, right at the base of the Appalachian Mountains. And like I always like going outdoors and hiking and camping and biking and all that stuff. And it's all right there. Yeah. So it had a lot to play. Those were the main reasons that really kind of drove me. Florida State, I felt, was just kind of not really, my thing. Kind of a typical, Florida. Cheesy kind of town, set back in time. And then the Naval Academy, I got in, but I also didn't think at that time I was ready to go down that path yet, and dedicate myself kind of to that military mindset path yet, because and it was a good thing I didn't, because I know now looking back I wasn't ready, but that's what kind of led me to go into the Navy. When I did graduate from Clemson, I was like, I need to figure this out. I need to get some discipline here, because I lost a little bit of that, I think, kind of in the college years, doing the academics, doing the swimming, and then throwing in the girls and the partying. Becomes a lot, and you lose a little bit of a kind of like that northern star where you want to go, because there's just
sidetracked
so much coming at you. But
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. I had a chance I went to the Citadel, but I had a chance to go to West Point, and I made the same decision. I was like, it's a great school, but can I make a decision when I'm 17, a 10-year decision? It was a 10-year decision, 4 years plus the 6 years, plus this summer. I mean, literally, right? You have to report in June
Yeah.
for training, before the school even starts. I was like, I don't know if I'm really ready to make that decision. And kind of glad I didn't, because I don't think you should make a decision like that unless you're sure.
And when I went to the Navy later, I always found, at least I always felt, and I think a lot of guys will testify to this, and I'm sure Jack would, your son would say the same. The best officers usually are the ones that came from like an ROTC program, or they started as enlisted and they crossed into that officer realm after they'd done 4 or 6 years. As an enlisted guy, because you've been there, you've done that, you got the T-shirt, you earned it, right? And I always felt like those guys, it was just something a little bit more about them that kind of made them a better leader, and I think those guys kind of they earned that respect, right? Because they've been there, done that, right? So
yeah. It's true. I mean, I think sometimes if you come into an organization, whether it's the SEALs or something else, and you come in like, I'm the officer in charge, I graduated from here, it's almost like that is supposed to make me a good officer versus are you a good officer or not? Mm-hmm. And same with business, like, someone who transfers in or someone gets elevated, really comes down to results. What are you producing? And I think in the SEALs, is it true that you're more likely, because you have smaller teams and everyone's an expert at something, that the leader tries to figure out what the goal is and then goes to the team and says, y'all give me a plan, y'all tell me how to do this, right? Instead of micromanaging. Right. Yeah. And why do you think that is? Why is that?
It's big boy rules. I mean, you get to that point, you've gone through the training, and yes, you were right, everybody kind of has a specialty. But I think what makes guys in the teams or in the platoons unique is, you might be good at demolition, I might be a medic and this and that. On our off team, guess what you're training me on? How to do demo better. And I'm training you on how to do some medical, because there's going to possibly come a point in time where I go down or you go down, and guess what? Someone's got to do it, right? So you don't want to kind of put or take a chance on, we'll figure it out. Mm-hmm. No. Yeah. But I think the officers understand that, and it very much is that mindset, big boy rules, and if there is something asked of you, and he gets a group of you guys together, and you can't come up with a solution, it will go back to the table, and we'll bring in more people and figure it out, But they give you enough chance to prove yourself, but also enough rope to also hang yourself too when you first go into the teams, right? It's kind of let's see how good this guy is, or let's see how good or where he needs help or where he needs assistance, right? Yeah. So it's kind of a give take thing.
Yeah. Well, certainly one of the best organizations in the world for what you do. So you got out of Clemson, All-American swimmer, and you decided to become a SEAL. So how did you make that decision?
I had always known I was going to go in the military as a kid. I was always that kind of kid, when I wasn't, my more younger days when I wasn't swimming as much, I was running around the backwoods, playing G.I. Joe with the other kids in the neighborhood. But when I graduated school, I took a hard look at myself and needed to find something that could give me a sense of more drive and discipline at that time. And I needed it because, 4 years of college, it was fun. Well, 5 years. I went 5 years, excuse me. This was the 5-year program.
Bonus plan.
Yeah, a lot of fun, made some great friends, but I definitely needed to kind of to find that guiding light again. So I literally knew I was going to go in the military. That's when I started research, and I was like, well, what is the absolute hardest thing there is to do? That was the first question that entered my head. Yeah. Like, what is it? What is it? And I started doing research, whether it be a pilot or, a SEAL or whatever. So I went and took the ASVABs, and then I started talking to the recruiters, and I did very well in the ASVAB. They wanted me to be a nuclear sub officer, and I said you couldn't pay me enough money to sit in a tin can underwater.
Yeah.
I wound up on the Navy SEALs, and I had a couple buddies of mine that went before I did, and heard about how hard it was, heard about the horrors of it, the training, but also, on the flip side, if you make it through, how much fun it is. And I will be the first to say that still to this day, it is the best job I've ever had and I will ever have had. Mm-hmm. There's nothing else out there that I can do even moving forward, I think, that would match not only how exciting the job was to do, but really is the people that you work with. Mm-hmm. And that's what made it exceptional. Yeah. I've yet to really find that equivalent. Mm-hmm. Camaraderie, if you will, and working with others yet since mm-hmm. I've left. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to give up, right? But mm-hmm. I just don't see it happening. Yeah. Not to say that I can't. Maybe one day if I started my own business venture and brought on a team and hired like that, I could mm-hmm. build something like that. But where I stand now, it's hard to
difficult.
Beat that.
I'm sure. Yeah. Well, be great if you did that one day. You brought in your own team, and mm-hmm. of course you probably have just like the SEALs, you have a support team somewhere helping you, but you could have your little nucleus, the people, mm-hmm. you and Jack maybe.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, that's cool. So that's ironically the same question Jack asked when he was getting out of college is, what's the hardest thing I could do? And he came up with the same answer. Yeah. And anyway, good for you. That's awesome. And then you got out after a while, and you had a medical discharge, yes. Mm-hmm. And then they still wanted you to help them, and so they hired you back through a military contractor to help.
Yes. So I went to a company called DynCorp. They were being contracted out by the State Department. Went right back to Afghanistan, lived there for 4 years, pretty much damn near straight. And we work in and out of the embassy, doing protection for folks when they would come in, like, big wigs. We would do protection for, like, John McCain, Hillary Clinton, Condoleezza Rice, stuff mm-hmm. like that. And then also, folks from the USAID or whatever, but we would do long-range movements, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours outside of Kabul, which it's just you and these folks you're moving and 4 dudes with guns. Like it was kind of interesting. It was no support. We didn't have support from the
no air support,
no nothing. It was just us and like, hey, good luck, which kind of made it wild. It was like the wild, wild west.
Were they trying to get you, the bad people?
Oh, I mean, I got blown up in an IED doing that job. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yes, but interesting. It was an interesting time. The rules of engagement when I was in the military were really non-existent at that time. And even in the contract, when I went in there as a contractor, it was still very much wild, wild west. It was a fun time to be in Afghanistan.
I think I remember, because tell me if I'm crazy, but you were on Facebook, and I would follow you on Facebook, and I would see you like catching fish somewhere. Like you would have a weekend off or something and fly to the Philippines, or I don't know what the heck you were doing.
Yeah, so we would get, you could take a long week off if you wanted to, depending on how much time you had racked up, and instead of coming all the way back home stateside, which that flight from Afghanistan, you going from there to Dubai to Atlanta or whatever. I mean, that's a 24-hour, 30+ ordeal. So usually, we would fly to, somewhere in Dubai. Or I remember when I was doing a lot of work after I left Afghanistan for the maritime security, down in Kenya, down in Africa. I get to play a lot down in Africa and Kenya and South Africa, we would do up in Djibouti. We were diving with whale sharks, like stuff like that. Yeah.
Did you get some fishing in too? I thought,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's just it's just crazy to think that you were over there doing all that serious work and then able to like catch a fish and.
Yeah, and you do that kind of work, and you can't just keep doing it 24/7, 365. Nobody, after a while, you're just going to mentally drown yourself. You're going to just be exhausted. So getting those little breaks here and there just to cut loose and do something where your intensity and your attention level is up here constantly elevated. You gotta find ways to bring it down and kind of
chill.
Yeah, a little bit. But it's hard to believe I did that between the military and the contracting for about 14 years. I think I've been to over probably damn near 50 countries in that span, different countries doing different things, whether it be for work or pleasure. I loved it. People always talk and look back. Would you do things different? Do you have any regrets?
No.
And I think everybody has that in some way, shape, or form. But and I do, but I really don't. I don't think I have any regrets because I got to see and do a lot of stuff that people never get the chance to do. So I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good. That's awesome. That's awesome, and we appreciate that you did it. You did it for 14 or so years. So then let's talk about the transition, because again, I think when you came back, I think I kind of came back to we became friends again, because you were looking for help to transition into the business world, which is very difficult when you come from something as cool as you're doing to cold calls and business lunches and staying at the embassy suites. And again, we've done quite a bit of this kind of coaching here in Greenville as other SEALs have moved here.
You guys have done a hell of a job with the Future Foundation too. And
well, thank you.
I got on. I'm now on the app, and I've been on it for a while. I just realized I had it.
Yeah.
But to see the growth of how much that organization, not only here, which like you guys do, and everybody that's done locally, but throughout the entire country, man, that's just really phenomenal, man.
It is good.
Thank you for that.
Well, gosh, it's my pleasure. I'm glad. But I think Greenville is outside of your two bases, Virginia Beach and San Diego, Greenville's the number one hub for SEALs.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was our goal. So it's great. It's great that's happening. We certainly have a safe city now with all you guys walking around. Mm-hmm. I want to say, first of all, I'm proud of you because from the beginning, when you got out, it was very difficult, and you have very strategically worked your way from selling steel, right, your first job in Charlotte.
My first job out, I wasn't in sales. I was actually hired directly to be the CEO's EA, executive assistant.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Chief of staff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it.
I didn't know that.
I was his right-hand man, basically helping him day in, day out. And he's a great guy, fantastic, smart businessman, entrepreneur, kind of like yourself. Mm-hmm. Started his business, in his 20s, and he actually just sold it last year. Made a great amount of money. Mm-hmm. I congratulate him. But he was South African Special Forces. So when I came in to do the interview, he looked at my resume, and I explained to him that, I'm making the transition, and he didn't hesitate to bring me on. And he's like, you better be here before me every morning. You better leave after I do. But it was a exceptional role because I got to wear a lot of different hats in that 2-year time and working with him. And he's still a mentor to me this day.
Wow.
I still call him for advice, just like I call you, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what I figured out that I had to do. And it took me about a year to figure that out when I was making that transition. Mm-hmm. Had it not been for the likes of like someone like him or getting help from like you, going through that nonprofit that I went through to train me up on how to work in the tech industry and sales, I don't know where I'd be.
Yeah.
So I mean, And it's a hard thing, I think, for guys to do, like with our background or in the military in general, to make that, to turn this switch off and try to turn another one on and not have any real direction. Because let's face it, the DOD doesn't give you shit. Mm-hmm. They give you a 1-day class on here's how you're going to transition out. Get out of here, right? And there's a lot more to it. And I also kind of attribute, I think, that's why, we have a lot of guys that are taking their own lives. And I think, in my experience, when these people can't find a sense of purpose and they're trying and they're trying and they're trying, and they don't have the guidance they need or the know-how or the direction, I think they give up. Yep. And it's sad to see.
And I will add to that, and this is kind of a sales lesson to some degree. I don't know how I'm turning it into that, but, having dealt with a lot of people transitioning out of the military, the ones that are super sad are believing things that aren't true. They start telling each other things like nobody cares about us and, there's no one will help us. And then you can just turn around and say, well, sure there are. Maybe not all of them, but John will.
Yeah.
And the guy from Pegasus will. I mean, there's plenty of people that want to help.
Yeah.
And so I think, particularly if you start hanging around other people that are negative and saying
you feed on it.
Yeah, you don't want to hear anything else.
And the flip side, if you hang out with people that are positive and they want to help you out, like it's you feed on that too, and it just takes you to a different road.
And you've done a great job of reaching out over the years. And like many times Troy will reach out and he'll be, I think, pretty sure what he wants to do. Like, I think I want to go change and do this job. But he'll call me and probably several other people and just say, I want to run this by you and get your feedback. I'll say what I think. Maybe he hears 3 or 4 opinions, then you decide. Mm-hmm. Just because he calls me doesn't mean he's got to do it, right? You just get someone's opinion and decide. So I hope everyone will reach out and find people that will have good conversations and stay away from negative, get to the positive people.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. We have a good story because it's been very good in terms of helping each other.
Exactly. I finally helped you out, and I still hit you up now. I think if we were to put each other's who's helped who more on a scale, I think you're winning now at this point.
Who cares? Well, but another thing you did that was good is, you got kind of, I guess, brought back into the business world with your first job with Pegasus, working for this great CEO. But you started to think, I want to get into the tech world. And not only that, but I want to sell tech somehow to the military, to the Department of Defense. I don't want to just throw away all this 16 years of work in the military. I want to keep those connections and contacts and my background, make it important. Security clearance, all that stuff. And so you went and you took a class on that.
Yeah, so why I wanted to get into tech real quick, I mean, being in the military and in the contracting work, I directly see how having technology available to you can change the outcome on a battlefield very, very quickly if you have that advantage, right? So I've always been drawn to it. And then another reason I wanted to get into it, I had friends that I went to college with, and they started doing that way before me, but they didn't have it, and not to be arrogant, but they didn't have the drive that I did, and I saw them become wildly successful. I was like, well, shit, if they could do it, I know I can do it. Right? So those were kind of the reasons I wanted to do it. But yeah, to your point, I went and I found it was a nonprofit at the time it was a program called TechQuad. It was a married couple, a husband and wife that were taking veterans into small cohorts and training them up over the course of 10 weeks of everything IT 101. Week 1 will focus on cloud, week 2 will focus on cybersecurity, week 3 will focus on blah, 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 blah. Every week you get a 101 education on a different area. And they're also training you how to do sales 101. right? And you go through the program. It was pretty competitive, actually, really, to get in. And when they first started, they were only taking officers. And I think the reason, and they never said this, but I think the reason they were doing this is because usually officers will come with a bigger Rolodex of contacts within the DoD. But I was the first enlisted to get accepted, and it took me 2 times to apply before I accepted us.
Yeah.
They said no way the first time, and I came back and did it again. They're like, "Well, we're not going to get rid of you. I guess we'll let you in." But yeah, that was how I got my introductory into IT tech sales, and I knew I wanted to ultimately wind up in the DoD space, because even though I couldn't wear the uniform anymore and serve a country, like, this is the next best thing. Like, let's get the gear and the tech into the hands of the men and women in the military so they can go out there and kick ass and do their jobs and have, like, the best chance of success. And I think it's not as cool as being a team guy anymore, but it is the next best thing to ensure that these people now fighting the fight have everything they need.
That's awesome. That's a very good reason to do it. I was thinking it's because you get paid more, but I guess that's part
Well, yeah,
of
that is
Yeah. But you
that
know what?
is true.
When you see your friends do well, it's kind of like the old 4-minute mile. Because, I mean, once some guy ran the 4-minute mile, like, everyone, like 15 people did it, right? So if you see your friend, your goofball friend from Clemson, making all this money, you're like, I can do this, no problem. So that's cool. That's a good story. And then from there, I'm just trying to remember, you got into cyber, right?
Yeah, so when I graduated that class, my first job was at a small MSSP down in Augusta, Georgia.
Yeah.
I did 1 year there, and my first year in sales, right? Within the first 6 months, I had, like, one of the largest sales in the entire history of the company. I had no idea what the hell I was doing.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right?
Yeah.
And within at the end of the first year, another company found out about me, and I kind of got recruited and went over there. Now, at this point, I was still on the commercial side of the house, and I'd always set a goal in my head, like, if I can't get on the DoD side of things within 5 years, like, I'm gonna probably not stay in this career, because that's where I wanted to be back to, in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But I was able to get there in 3, so I did a year at the small MSSP, 2 years at Citrix, and then AWS, Amazon Web Services, called me up and said, "Hey, how would you like to work on our Navy team?" I said, "Sign me up."
Yeah, I remember that
Yeah.
because I thought that was perfect. I mean, you can't really get to work for a much better large company than Amazon.
Yeah, it was a great opportunity, a great place to cut my teeth as an introductory and going into the DoD. Because they have a good mix of folks in there that have a DoD background that came, like, right from the military, and some that don't. So you're getting, you're surrounding yourself with people that have a wide various background. And you work there. Like, you've heard the stories, I'm sure. I mean, 1 year at AWS or Amazon feels like 7 somewhere else, and it's absolutely true. But again, I don't regret it. It was a great place to really cut my teeth and learn.
And make contacts.
Yeah.
So you were selling storage, Amazon storage, cloud storage, right?
Yeah, all their cloud services.
And back to the Navy.
Yeah. So across the entirety of the Navy, from an AWS standpoint, there was probably a half a dozen or a little bit more account executives that covered the entirety of it, right? And some of us covered certain commands, the others covered certain commands, because to have one person do all that.
Yeah. So somebody might cover the fleet people or the air people.
They couldn't do it, and if they could, they would they would be working themselves literally.
What was your area?
So they gave me the commands that really kind of focused on, like, supply chain, facility maintenance. But then I also kind of got a couple unique ones, like NCIS, Investigative Services. I finally convinced them to give me Naval Special Warfare. because no one's ever really gotten into there. And you know, if you have the secret handshake, you can kind of get your foot in the door, right? So, but yeah, it was a pretty good territory. When I started, it was maybe generating, you know, like 400K like ARR, and when I left there, it was just shy of 4 million a year.
Nice.
Like, so I was able to grow up pretty quick. But yeah, I enjoyed my time there. Would I ever go back? Probably not. And you know this. Yeah. There's just such a big difference between big box companies like that and Google and Microsoft, and then the smaller organizations like where I'm at now. Yeah. When you've kind of been subjected to those big box companies, it takes a toll on you, just mentally, and that takes a toll on you physically, and just a lot of political red tape BS that you got to deal with on a daily basis.
Back in the Navy.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're a whole different story though too.
But I mean, I do think it's a good idea. It's not a bad idea for someone building a career. In your case, having to start one later, is to, like, if you can work for the best company in the land for just a little while, you know, get to know a bunch of people, call some big accounts. Somebody smaller is going to grab you and pull you and give you more responsibility, probably chances to make more money, because you now have all that experience. Right. And it won't be probably as hard. You know,
and that's exactly kind of what has happened now. I went from AWS down to a very small organization. There are 100 of us there in the whole company in totality. And I got I covered for them the entire U.S. Navy and the entire U.S. Marine Corps, which is, you know, kind of new to me, covering the Marine Corps, but learning. Always.
Do they give you a hard time because you're not a Marine?
No. I mean, if they do, I just give it right back. Like, I don't care.
The challenge yourself.
And that's why I like the job, because, you know, in talking to these customers in the DoD, they're very straightforward. And if you can earn their trust and they like you and you can demonstrate a value proposition, like, they just want to work with you.
Is like the Marine people you would call on, is that Quantico, or would that be somewhere in Washington?
Everywhere.
I've
got free reign to call on everybody across.
So they're making independent decisions at different places, maybe, about what they need?
You know, for the like you talk about, like, policy and all that.
Well,
like,
I mean, if you're trying to sell them something from your company, they would buy one thing at Quantico and a different thing at Paris Island.
Oh yeah, that's how they do it in the DoD, and that's kind of one of my big beefs.
Okay,
you know,
I just thought it would be the same thing.
No, you would think.
Yeah.
No, man, and I can say this because I'm former military, but now that I'm on the outside looking in through a different lens, there isn't a day that doesn't go by when I'm in this job, in this role, selling to the DoD, that doesn't make me want to shake my head and put it right through the wall. Because there's a lot of them out there that are sometimes in the same command and they're trying to solve for the same problem, and they're not even talking to each other. They have no clue.
Just a big bureaucracy. I mean,
it is, and it's frustrating to see, and it's sad to see.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's just, it is what it is, and the best you can do is, when you see that, to call it out. Try to bring those folks together and help them. And at the end of the day, I've never really liked the term being called sales or salesperson. I think what we do is solve problems. I like to be called a problem solver. Because if you can do that for somebody, you're going to have a lifelong customer, and you continue to solve those problems for them.
I'm sure you're crushing it. So now this company's based in Washington, is that right?
So they're based out of Annapolis, Maryland.
Okay.
They've been around since the late 70s, but the most recent owner, he bought it from his parents about 10 or 11, 12 years ago. Super young guy, younger than me. He's probably 38, 39 years old. But exceptionally smart when it comes to the industry. He's exceptionally talented leader, and he has figured out very quickly how to treat his employees very well. And with that, the tenure within that company is something that you never see across like tech.
Wow.
People staying there for 10, 12, 14 years.
So what is he
Like
doing to make that happen?
His open door policy, no matter who you are, you can always call him, get a meeting set up with his ability to listen and actually care versus just dictate or kind of bark orders, I think sets him apart. And he just knows how to take care of his employees and treat them well.
Yeah.
I can say like that didn't happen when I was at AWS, right? And now coming into this environment, it blew me away.
Right.
And it blew me away that somebody so young was able to figure that out and build just a great little small company. We're very niche.
Yeah.
And the fact that we only focus on like cyber, data analytics, AI. So like our line card, where most VARs are, 400, 500, 600 products, ours is like 40. So we're just laser focused on certain areas.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, I just think, in terms of, a teaching moment for the listeners is, you've got yourself in a situation where you know how to sell. You've certainly got your discipline, from your experience over the years. And you're selling to an area that you should be selling to. And you're selling something that's very important, with a good company. You're really in a good spot, I think. It's probably the best spot you've been in since the teams. And I'll say, if something happened to that company or they sold or, who knows what, with what you've established, you can just walk across the street. There's other people who would want your skill set and your connections. So I think that's a very valuable thing you've created. And again, having known you through this, it wasn't always that way.
Hell no. It's a process, and it's still an ongoing process.
Right.
It always is.
You're always looking to improve the situation, but I think the situation's as good as it's been.
Exactly.
It's awesome.
Yep.
Okay, a couple more questions. I'm very happy. A couple more questions. Are you using the AI tools like Grok or ChatGPT? Are you using those on your job these days?
For like prospecting and outreach or anything like that?
or
You know
looking
what?
stuff up?
I have not dove into that. The way I do prospecting in the DoD is it's kind of different than the commercial side because, if someone were to hand me a list of, hey, here's 500 emails and here's 500 numbers, like, let's just be honest. A lot of people don't want to go through that.
Right.
And I've done that a lot. I've done it. I've tried it. And it's a numbers game. You know that.
Yeah.
If you're batting 4 or 5%, like, hey, that's a great day. But what I like to try to make connections. So a lot of the outreach I do, I'm stalking people on LinkedIn. I'm not gonna lie. And like that's how I got my first big meeting at AWS. The CEO of one of my commands wrote a white paper and I read it, and I could relate to it. And I just sent him a blind message on LinkedIn asking him if he wanted to go tour an Amazon fulfillment center. And like in 10 minutes I got a response back. It's like, holy shit. But I that's how I try to find and build. I'd rather have or find 5 or 10 really good contacts that I can relate to in outreach than go through a list of 100.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess it's a little old school, but not too old school. But no, I have not dove in that yet, and it's something I need to look into.
Yeah.
But have you tried it? Have you
All the time.
And
I would consider it first and foremost as a complete replacement for Google.
right,
It just gives you better information, more information, and it's more of a summary of the answer to your question versus a bunch of links.
okay,
So I would definitely switch. I would use Grok. That's my favorite one. That's the X one, and you can use it for. You can ask for more information about this person, this colonel, whatever, whoever it was.
Yeah.
You can say, give me more information about this person, and what's the best way to reach them, and you can just get all kind of stuff, so you're even more prepared before you go in. So I tell everyone, I would suggest you use it a little bit every day for something, because it's become,
So you're using it more than for just prospecting or whatever.
Yes.
You're using it just to very quickly attain general knowledge on this subject or that subject, right?
absolutely
Yeah.
quickly too. And I can
Yeah.
I'll say, give me 500 words summarizing the answer to this question.
Oh.
I don't want one link, and I don't want a white paper.
Right,
Give me
right.
500 words, or give me the 5 bullet points with 3 lines under each one.
That's a great idea. See,
Yeah.
I'm learning, always learning from you. I'm always learning from you.
AI is cool. AI is cool.
Yeah.
And then social media, you mentioned LinkedIn. That's your main social for
Yeah, because,
customers?
you're always finding people that are putting, like, for example, a white paper on there that they wrote, or they attended this seminar and had this, they thought of
Yeah.
this outcome or this and that, and you can kind of start seeing where some of their challenges or pain points are, and if you can read through the lines,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's where I like to kind of do all that.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not in an area where, I need 200 or 300 customers.
Right.
I want like 5 good ones,
Yeah.
and that's it. And
like
that'll
it.
keep me more than busy,
Yeah.
right? So, finding them and starting that connection that's genuine right out of the rip, I think is important because, and I said it before, I think for people to want to work with you, they got to like you, they got to trust you, and they got to understand your value proposition. And,
Yeah.
and if you can accomplish that kind of trio, like, you're going to have
Yeah.
a great relationship. right?
Well, I also like something you said, in terms of inviting the guy to come see
Yeah.
a center, an AWS center. So instead of most people, first of all, most people don't do it in the first place, right? They're just sitting there complaining that there's no good leads. But if you're trying to prospect and find people, most people will find the person and say, hey, I read your white paper. It looks good. Could I call you and tell you about our product? Something. And the guy's like,
No.
that's just a waste of it was a waste of my time. But if you say, I think it might be helpful if you took a look at this fulfillment center we have, and if you want a tour, I'll give you a private tour.
And that's what I did. And you know what? It could not got any better because the command was NAVSUB, which is Navy Supply Command.
Uh-huh.
And the way I thought of that, I was like, well, shit, these guys they're the Amazon of the Navy.
Yes.
They are.
Yes.
I was like, sir, I read your white paper, and I understand you're trying to modernize your supply chain with the Navy. Would you like to come see how Amazon does it in one of our fulfillment centers?
Yeah.
There was literally 2 sentences. He was like, hell yeah. Where and when?
Yeah.
And like, this is a 4-star admiral.
Yeah.
Like,
Wow.
and not only do we do it like that first time,
Yeah.
we did it like 2 or 3 more times.
Yeah.
And every time he would bring more of his entourage and, the CIO and the CISO
Yeah.
and all these other people. And now, like, that's how I got AWS into that command.
Yeah.
When I got there, they were doing $0 with us.
Well, I love
You know?
the idea of having a thing. The thing could be the tour of the center, or the thing could be meeting the guy on our board who's the senator over so-and-so, or it could be going to a Clemson football game, or going to the SEAL range, and shooting a 50 cal or something.
Right,
But
yeah.
something that you can offer somebody that would be interesting to them to get them to say yes to you. And then you say, hey, can we talk some business?
Yeah.
So you give first.
Yeah.
You give first.
And I still think that. Like, I've had conversations with, like, my engineers, they're the most important part of any sales team from a tech
Yeah.
sales standpoint. But I've had, and it took me a while to figure this out, but once I saw it, it was clear as day. But, I'll ask my engineers, like, hey, I don't want you to mention a product or a service that we sell in the first 2 or 3 calls.
Yeah.
Until we know what the business problem is
Right.
and what they want to do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want you to mention
No.
anything.
Good going. Yeah, that's great.
So I was like, let's figure out the problem. How to solve it from a business standpoint. What happens if we do? What happens if we don't?
Yeah.
Translate that.
Yeah.
Okay, we want to do this. Now, what can we pull off of this shelf from a tech standpoint that we can put together as a solution that will solve for that
Yeah.
problem?
Well, imagine
Like,
if you.
and that's fun.
It is fun. But
Yeah.
imagine if you were leading your team, your SEAL team, and you start saying, okay, take your 50 cal and go up on that. And they're like, what are we trying to do, boss?
Yeah.
Until you know what you're trying to do, and salespeople make that mistake all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. They say, hey, I'm John Sterling. Nice to meet you. Let me tell you about my sales training. Okay, we've been in business since, all that stuff. I mean, it's crazy. It's so much easier just to listen.
Exactly.
Good for you, Troy.
It's especially with the engineer types for them to sit back and listen.
Right.
It's something you got to train them on, just like we all need training, right? When you find one that can actually sit back and listen and take the time to listen, because they're smart as hell.
Yeah.
They're super smart. They want to just start talking and try to get things out there. And have you thought of this? Have you thought of this? Pump the brakes. Let's hear first what the problem is and truly embrace and understand what it is. So.
Good. Well, a couple of cleanup questions. These are very important.
Okay.
Favorite all-time book?
So it's not a book specific, but it's a type of book, and I'm a big fan of it's either the Idiot's Guide to or Something for Dummy books.
Okay.
Because I'm always working on learning something or other, and I just like these books because they're the Cliff Notes version. They give me like a one-on-one knowledge set of how to do whatever it is, and it gives you enough courage to go out and try that whatever you're trying, and that's where the real learning takes place.
Yeah.
Once you have a little bit of confidence and a one-on-one knowledge set to go out and I'm gonna go try to rebuild my transmission. Mm-hmm. I read the Idiot's Guide to How to Rebuild Transmission. I'm going to go out and try it. Okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
And now I'm out under the truck. Shit's falling everywhere. I'm covered in oil, but I'm making progress.
Yeah.
Right? So
I like that.
It's a style of book. That's any of those.
Yeah. So the old 80-20 rule, you kind of get 80%, you kind of understand it, and then you figure it out from there.
Oh, yeah, well, 20% understand it, and then the other 80% on the job training.
All right, and what's your favorite word?
Oh gosh, you know what? I'm gonna have to let the Baltimorean in me come out. It's probably pandemonium. Just because of the way you say it from Baltimore, it's hilarious. There's a couple good skits out there. I think I can find it on YouTube. I'll send you one. You'll understand why I said that when I said that. Yeah.
Okay.
Pandemonium.
Pandemonium. All right. And favorite band?
I'm a hippie at heart, so that's going to be a toss-up between the Allman Brothers and the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, man. Those are two good ones.
Mm-hmm.
Those are two good ones. Did you see the Dead in person?
I have.
Yeah, where did you see him?
Even before Jerry Garcia died.
Yeah.
Up in Maryland, they would always play at like RFK stadiums and this and that. Now I will go see. There's a lot of good tribute bands, but the Dead and Company, which still has now I think 3 left of the original band, but with they have John Mayer.
Yeah.
Standing in and playing guitar and singing. I actually was blown away how good he's very talented.
He's so good.
Yeah, exceptional to see. If you like the Dead at all, you've never seen Dead and Company, put it on your to-do list. You're a musician, I know you would.
I've seen him once. I saw him once.
Yeah,
with Jerry, so it was pretty cool. Very cool. Well, I'm so glad we got to have this conversation today. A lot of good nuggets for people to learn from, and happy for you where you are now. Eventually, one day, we might remember how we met. It'll be real nice. So thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it, John.
Okay,
thank you very much.
Right.
Yep.